your patience. Whenever you're ready, you guys can go ahead and get started. We're ready.
Well, welcome everybody to Wave Street Studios. Tonight we have Subjective Evolution of Consciousness, a beautiful talk about spiritual life. And also we have these beautiful guests here. We have Srila Bhakti Pavan Janardhan Maharaj and Sripad Bhakti Kamal Tyagi Maharaj here. And we have Vrinda Devi Dasi, and they'll be talking about subjective evolution of consciousness. So please open your ears and your heart and see what you can get from this.
So we're going to start with a few prayers, and then we'll sing a little bit before we go into the talking part of the program. All right. So, Om Jnana Timarandasya Jnanajana Shalakaya Chakshurunmilitam Yena Tasmai Shivurave Namah Gurva Bishtam Supurakam Guraganaira Sisha Sambhushitam Chintya Chintya Samasta Veda Nipanam Shirupa Patanagam Govinda Bidam Ujwalam Bharatanam Bhaktyan Vidam Sundaram Vande Vishwagurun Cha Divyad Bhagavat Prem Navi Bija Pradam Devam Divyatanum Suchandavanam Balarka Chilanshitam Sandrananda Puram Sadeka Bharanam Vairagya Vidyam Buddhim Sri Siddhanta Nidim Subhakti Lasitam Saraswatanam Baram Vandetam Shubharam Madeka Sharanam Nyashisvara Sridharam Sri Siddhanta Saraswati Vidito Gorya Gorvanvai Vatobhanoriva Prabhata Gagane Yogara Sankirtanai Mayavara Timingilo Daragatan Udritya Jivaniman Krishna Prema Sudabdi Gahana Sukam Pradat Prabhum Tam Bhaje Vanshakopatarubyasya Kripa Sindhu Bhyevacha Patitanam Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namah Namo Mahabharanyaya Krishna Prema Pradayate Krishnaya Krishna Chaitanya Namane Gauratavishe Namah. Gurudev Kripa Bindu Diya Korwe Dase Srinapeka Tidina
Dev Kripa Bindu Diya Korwe Dase Srinapeka Tidina
Sakala Sahane Bolodiya Koro
Sakala Sahane Bolodiya Koro
Nijamane Sriya
Nigamane Sriya
Sakale Saman Korite Shakati Devonata Jata Jata
Sakale Saman Korite Shakati Deolata Jata Jata
Sabe Toga Ibo Harinama Sukhe
Abhito Gaibo Harinama Sukhe Aparadha Behato Viheno Sipa Sriyaisha Karuna
Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Nitai Parakamala Koti Chanda Shishitala Nitai Parakamala Koti Chanda Shishitala Jai Jagata Jura Jai Jagata Jura Hey no Nitai Vinay Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna,
Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare. Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare. Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare. Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Jai Guru Hari Bol, Hari Bol, Hari Bol, Hari Bol. Jai Guru Hari Bol, Hari Bol, Hari Bol.
So we're very happy to be here again tonight for, I believe this is our third program. Is that correct? Third program at Wave Studio. And with our very gracious hosts and very beautiful facility here. And we're fortunate to be able to come to this nice place in Monterey. We normally stay at our ashram in SoCal, which is near Capitola. Actually, we're at 2900 North Rodeo Gulch Road, SoCal. So tonight we wanted to speak about the subjective evolution of consciousness. And it's a very important topic because, first of all, consciousness is not always understood. That consciousness is actually the quality of the presence of spirit. When we see consciousness, we can understand because that spirit is present. The presence of what we will call the jiva, the soul in this body, is what gives consciousness. And we can say that our consciousness in this body is localized in the sense that I may have some expanded consciousness, but generally my consciousness is if someone touches me, I'm aware of that, but I'm not aware if someone else is touched in this room. My consciousness is restricted to my personal body. But that consciousness, how does it develop? How has it come how has it come into existence? From where has it come into existence? This is actually a topic which is of, fundamental importance, and it's really covered very nicely by spiritual, we can say spiritual visionaries, those who have defined what is actually consciousness. Because normally in this world, we think we have an objective view of reality. We think that reality is what I'm firmly planted upon, what I have my feet on. That's, my feet are planted on this earth, and I'm walking on this earth, and everything, in this way I'm moving about, and I'm the controller of my actions. But our vision of reality, as the title says, is subjective, not objective. Rather, as we can say, one idea of subjective or subjectivity is that which is coming from a higher plane down to us, which is descending to us. One example we've heard is that of suggestion. For instance, we've heard of the term hypnotism. And in hypnotism, the hypnotist gives some, idea, and then one perceives reality according to that hypnotic suggestion, that you will perceive what it is ice, you perceive that as hot or something. So we can say, even within our experience, we hear about, they're glancing over the material nature, let there be light. Well, is that term, let there be light, can that not be considered as the command or the suggestion of a supreme hypnotist, or how you are perceiving reality? Just like, we're in this world. If an ant walks across this floor, that ant may not have so much, experience of my existence. He's walking across the floor. And only if I make that ant aware of my existence will understand my existence. For instance, it's walking, and I put a finger and I'm, obstructing the path of the ant. Then the ant may come to understand that something is obstructing my path. Otherwise, the ant doesn't have necessarily any direct perception, at least as far as we can understand. Doesn't have a perception of my existence until I make that ant aware of my existence. Not in a harmful way, but I'm just giving an example. And in the same way, there are many things that are beyond, our vision, and those suggestions, those influences upon our existence. We are not necessarily aware of what is beyond our vision unless something from a different, from a plane beyond our existence makes itself known to us. You can see, like, for instance, just on some level, we may not be aware of what's going on in the weather or something like that. But then when some tornado hits or something like this happens, then of course we may become aware. Otherwise, we're just maybe unaware of what's going on. Maybe sometimes when there's some solar fires on the sun, then maybe sometimes the electronic devices or maybe satellites transmissions may be interrupted by solar flares from the sun, like that. Well, we may not be aware of that, but we can perceive that through the influence that they exert upon. All of a sudden, we're aware that somehow our reception is being interrupted, right? So, with us, we say that consciousness itself is evolving, from subtle, our very existence, we can say, is contingent on the subtleties of consciousness. There's a verse in the Bhagavad Gita that says, Yam yam vapi smaram bhavam tyajit yanti kalevaram tam tamevaite konteya sada tad bhava bhavita. Means that your activities in this lifetime are having an effect on your consciousness just by your mentality, your activities. That's affecting your consciousness, and over long term, your consciousness may become very much like, almost we can say, like solidified by those activities, like that mentality. Very materialistic mentality may lock you into that kind of very mundane existence. So this verse from Bhagavad Gita says that as your activities are influencing your consciousness on that subtle plane will exert its influence on the gross plane. Just like for one thing, we say that we can say that somebody's face or facial expressions may very well be a mirror of their mind, right? You can see that. When somebody is normal, we may not see anything, but when somebody is terrified, some fear is exerting itself from within, then you can see on in their facial features that fear, and sometimes it will be very visible there, and somebody will say, what's the matter, what's wrong, perceive it in that way. So the Gita verse is going beyond that. It's saying that what is subtle influences our whole existence now and in the future. And in the future, what is subtle will cause us to, we can say, go in that direction. Now, both in this lifetime, now, and also in the future, which may, not be within our perception, but our consciousness is taking us. Just like we can say the mind is just as to come here to the program, we're driving in a car. So the mind is also driving us. When we hear when Mahaprabhu, said to, for instance, Ramananda Roy would go to see Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, and when he would come to see Mahaprabhu, he would go straight to Mahaprabhu's residence and not necessarily go to the temple of Jagannath, etc. And then Mahaprabhu would say to Ramananda Roy, why have you come here first? And he says, well, that my heart is bringing me here. Where I'm like a passenger and my mind is taking me as a driver, is taking me here first. So just where we're going in life, our general direction is being dictated by, our own subtle energy, our own mental energy. And that's taking us into the physical plane. And I'm getting on a plane, I'm going on a train, I'm going in a car, I'm doing this, I'm doing that. So it says at the time of death, yam yam vapi smaram bhavam jajit yanti kalevaram. When I'm leaving this body, then I will go towards another existence, another possibly material existence on the basis of my consciousness. My consciousness will take me there. The consciousness is a result of my activities, and that will take me there. So the idea of subjective evolution, this idea is given in particular by Srila Bhakti Rakak Sridhar Dev Goswami Maharaj. And actually there is there is one book which is compiled on the basis of his speaking, called that Subjective Evolution of Consciousness. And it goes on, like I particularly, Srila Bhaktisundar Govindadev Goswami Maharaj, she was very fond of that subject, subjective evolution of consciousness, which is, we can say, something very specially, unique to Srila Sridhar Maharaj. And in the first chapter of that book, actually, Srila Sridhar Maharaj is discussing with several persons who are, actually they're scholars, they're PhDs, and they're discussing different elements of philosophy with Srila Sridhar Maharaj. And he talks about a plane which is called Chittabhas, the Chittabhas plane. Abbas, the word Abbas really refers to what a reflection, or we can say a glimpse, really. Chittabhas. So Chittabhas, what is that referring to? Chid refers to consciousness, and what the Chittabhas plane means is that the living entity is existing in this world, and the living entity is of the conscious plane. So in order to be able to experience an object within this world, it has to bring that object to the plane of consciousness, and therefore the ancient seers, they would see different phenomena like the mountains and the clouds, etc. They would see them as, because consciousness implies person. Consciousness is quality of personality. So the ancient seers would see the clouds, the earth, like even now we talk about Mother Earth, clouds, the earth, the mountains as persons. Because we can say they're being experienced on the plane of consciousness and brought to that level of consciousness, and therefore they're seen as personality, with personality. This isn't like pantheism. This is a different conception that was what we're talking about, Chittabhas. And it said, therefore, the ancient seers, they would sometimes write about this, the spirit of the mountains, the spirit of the sea, the spirit, right? And they would name some of those, they had names also. They were seen as persons. So it was a very personal conception of existence, that everything around was being seen along the plane of consciousness, and saying that you couldn't really experiencing anything without bringing it first to the plane of consciousness. So, and moreover, the plane of consciousness is exerting itself and is actually descending to us. Now, I remember one verse of the Srimad Bhagavatam, and this is, sometimes called the Bhagavad Purana by Vedavyas. A few days ago on Sunday was what they call Guru Puja, the appearance day, or the birthday of Vedavyas. And he compiled many Vedic literatures, Shrutis, Puranas, so many Mahabharata, and among the Puranas is the Bhagavad Purana, Srimad Bhagavatam. So one verse always intrigued me. And that verse says, Savai pumsam paro dharmo yato bhaktirat hoksaje ahaituki yapradiyatma yayatma suprasidati. And it says, Savai pumsam paro dharmo, the highest engagement. Savai pumsam paro dharmo yato bhaktirat hoksaje. The highest engagement, or the highest occupation that everyone can have, is to establish a loving relationship with the Supreme, And that's Supreme may be known by different names, according to one's conception. But for us, the Supreme is, Shri Shri Radha Krishna, Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. But to establish a loving relationship with the Lord, we'll say. And ahaitukiya pradiyata yayatma suprasidate. And that relationship should be without any, mundane motivation. Should not be prompted by some egotism or egoism. It shouldn't be prompted in this way by some mundane desire. And it should be without any interruption. Ahaitukiya pradiyatma. And I used to think about that, and I was thinking, how can one come to that plane? Because normally everything we do is prompted by some desire from within, our own desire. That's what's prompting us to do something. But this verse is saying that to establish that plane of consciousness, or come to that plane of, we can say, spiritual consciousness, it should be done without any material motivation. But everything I'm doing is materially motivated, and it also should be without any interruption. Now, how also can that be? Because, we see within this world, I may be of a good mind and everything, and I'm very eager to do so many activities, and I may wake up, I'm not well, or I'm not, or my mind is disturbing me, and I'm not engaged in hardly any activity. So how will that be without any interruption? Because we all live with some semblance of living on the mental plane. So I was thinking, how can this be? How can one exert oneself or push oneself to that plane of consciousness when we're in this material world? And then I heard, and yayatma suprasidati, if one can do that, if one can come to that plane of, that plane where you're not acting selfishly, and you're not acting without, you're acting without any interruption, then that will completely satisfy you. You will come to a very satisfied stage of existence. And I was thinking, how can this be? And then I heard Srila Sridhar Maharaj's explanation of this. And he said, one way of seeing that it is not materially motivated, he says, is to understand that spiritual plane exists. It eternally exists, whether we're aware of it or not. That plane of devotion, that plane of, that spiritual plane is always existing. And that plane can descend to us, because if we're talking about the subjective evolution of consciousness, we will understand that evolution means that plane is descending to us. And it can descend to us because that it is one way of saying it's not materially motivated, or not materially motivated means that it is a spiritual plane that always exists. And it isn't motivated, it's not depending on motivation from my part. It can descend to me of its own sweet will. And also, and without any interruption, can also mean that it is ultimately irresistible. If that plane will come to me, it will be so, what can we say, so enchanting, so sweet, so harmonious, so attractive, so beautiful, so loving, that I won't be able to resist that plane of consciousness coming into me and coming over me like wave studio, like a warm, beautiful wave that's just overtaking my whole existence, right? And that plane coming to me. So anyway, this is, yes. So I'm going to let my dear colleague here, Shripad Bhakti Kamal Tyagi Maharaj, he will continue, but this is what we're talking about today, how that we can say that descent of that divine consciousness to our existence. All right.
Jai Srila Bhakti Pavan Janardhan Maharaj ki
Jai.
Jai. Jai Bhakta Vrinda ki Jai. Srila Gurudev ki Jai. Hari Ram Sankirtan ki Jai. Gaura Premanande Devo. So we're highly benefited to hear from Srila Maharaj about this subject, the subjective evolution of consciousness, which, as Maharaj mentioned, is a particular term that our Param Gurudev Srila Bhakti Rakshak Sridhar Dev Goswami Maharaj used in his representation of Gaudiya Vaishnav Siddhanta, and has great application in the present discussion of spiritual ideals in our society. This term was coined in part as a response to the popularity of Darwinian evolution theory. So we'll just come out and say it straight. We're not in favor of Darwinian evolution. In fact, we're here to convince you that it's a misconception. How? Why? Right? As our Param Gurudev summarized the issue, the core premise of the idea of Darwinian evolution is that from matter, or from a dull, lower state of things, there has evolved something sophisticated, developed, dynamic, and active. In short, from the static, the dynamic has arisen. From the dead, life has arisen. From stone has come soul. From matter has come consciousness. This is the underlying premise of the prevailing fashion of thought within the scientific community. So the antithesis to this is that matter comes from consciousness, that stone is a product of soul, that the objective world is existing in the midst of the subjective world, that the lower has come from the higher, the gross has come from the subtle. So what are the implications of these two styles of thinking? Right? If we look in our present society, we see the influence of the materialistic thought, the ground-up theory, right? And what does it lead to? It leads with preoccupation with material goods and sense experience. It leads us to defining our standard of living or our quality of life as the amount of material goods that we possess, the amount of material possessions that we have, and the amount of gratification of our senses that we can maximize, that we can have at our disposal, and typically to be had with the least effort involved to attain that. So to have the maximum amount of sense pleasure for the least amount of work at the lowest possible cost, with the highest disregard for how that affects anyone else in our society or the planet, success. Congratulations. Please come to our studio and give us a talk about how we can all become like that. Jai Srila Bhakti Pavan Janardhan Maharaj ki Jai. So this is the outcome. When we accept this premise. Okay, pause. Jai Gurudev. Hare Krishna. So when we accept this premise that from matter has come spirit, from stasis has come dynamism, then we tend to think that the more developed the technology, the more intricate our experience of matter can be, the greater the range and depth of our measurement and ability to quantify the movements of matter are, the more sophisticated we are, the more evolved we are. So the quote, evolution of consciousness is termed as the evolution of our ability to manipulate and understand matter. So the answer to this, or the spiritual antithesis of this, is that we do not want to crown, something as evolution, which only perpetuates our experience of matter. We want to say evolution is not to go further on the track of material experience, but to enter into a plane of experience above that, to move on another axis, so to speak, to have experience of something that's greater in nature than ourselves. We don't want to crown something as evolution, the more that we're experiencing an entity, a substance, matter, that's of lower capacity and lower sophistication than ourselves, right? What does this translate to? When man's love for machines, right? We become more fond of machines than people. We become more fond of having devices that suit our exact needs and fulfill our exact purposes in as little time as possible, and yet at the same time have more and more difficulty communicating, working with, and loving conscious entities that have independence and the ability to interact with us. So as much as we prioritize this, we actually degrade our capacity for relationships, and we dull our sensitivity to having a relationship with something of greater capacity, greater conscious nature than our very selves. So the call of every school of spiritualists, and in particular the emphatic call of the Gaudiya Vaishnavas, is to say, this is the wrong way. This is misdirected. This is a misconception of what is evolution. Evolution means to not evolve our experience of this objective world, but to enter into a higher subjective plane of experience. And specifically, to have an experience of a subject greater than ourselves. Rather than taking the role of the subject and wanting everything else to be an object, we want to assume the role of an object in the perception of a higher subject. In other words, we want to have a relationship with a being whose nature, whose capacity, whose qualities, whose virtues are of infinite greater magnitude than our own. We want to be in the midst of greatness. We want to have experience of greatness, not pursue the delusion that we ourselves can be or already somehow can think that we are the greatest possible thing that exists. Right? Rather, we consider the epitome of pride, that we dub evolution the self-aggrandizement of our own selfish pursuits. And to say, no, what about a culture of selfless service, of selfless giving towards an entity, towards a cause, towards a whole that's greater in nature than ourselves, that is so fine, so subtle, so caring, so loving, that it's not directly or loosely perceivable to us at present, but rather something that acquires attunement, acquires development, acquires preparation on our part to even to begin to develop a connection with. Something so fine, something so valuable. So that's what the subjective evolution of consciousness as a term points us to. Seeing life as an opportunity to evolve in our relationship with Krishna, with God, with the super subject, as our Param Gurudev described it, and to see that our purpose, the function of our consciousness is to have a relationship with that higher central subject, and not to simply, quote unquote, discover or explore the objective world of matter. So if we break this down, we can say the whole of existence can fit into two categories. What we currently know and have experienced, and what we have not yet known or experienced. Which one are you more interested in? Perpetuating what you've already experienced again and again, or experiencing something new? So anyone who's a seeker, anyone who's aspiring for something new, anyone who has a progressive mentality, they're going to say, I want the unknown. I want the fresh. Right? Then, in that category of all things that are at present unknown to us, let's make two more categories. That which can be known to us by our present tools or capacity, and that which is unknowable to us at present. Which one shall we investigate? So someone says, well, whatever, we have the tools to mean, let's start there. Okay. But what if we say that there's something that at present is unknowable to us, but that gradually we can attune ourselves to perceive it? And that is something that's going to be the most extraordinary, the most wonderful in comparison to the present scope of our known experience. A relatively mild parallel would be something like music in our present experience. We have some exposure to sound. Gradually, as we grow up, we learn to differentiate between noise or sound in general and music, something that is composed to evoke feeling, convey a message, and draw upon the method of tones, scales, notes, etc. So then many people, they may say, oh yes, I'm fond of music in preference to noise or in preference to sound in general. But then if you play them music, and you ask them, well, what is this right now? What are you listening to? Well, it's music, right? But then if you ask someone who's really studied music, and they say, well, there's chords, there's scales, there's tempo, there's rhythm, and they can tell you that was a fifth interval chord in 3/4 time, and they can spell out for you this entire composition and so much care and energy that's been spent to create this work of art. So someone who has no exposure, it's just noise. Someone who has a literal exposure, it's something nice. And then someone who has a lot of exposure, who's trained their ear to hear what are chords, what are notes, what are sounds, who's developed a sense of rhythm, they can come to say, this is an incredible piece of music. This is a finely crafted masterpiece. Right? So, like that, if the cultivation of musical appreciation is one of the greatest arts that's honored in human society, then we can say, why stop there? Why stop with just attuning ourselves to some fine manipulation of what they call the rarefaction of air, right? Why not learn to perceive, learn to attune ourselves to spiritual things that have far more composition, far more intricacy, far more depth of feeling that is there for us to experience? And that we can take up a spiritual practice as that means, as the way of attuning ourselves, developing our capacity to perceive and appreciate such universal truth. And that in the development of that appreciation, we find the ultimate art, the ultimate aesthetic experience, the ultimate joy. So we can frame the subjective evolution of consciousness as that, developing our capacity as a conscious entity to perceive the waves of grace, beauty, charm, and wonder that are flowing out from the supersubject, whom we call Krishna, the source of all attraction and satisfaction. So, in our present society, we're being influenced very strongly by the propaganda of the materialistic school, right? To feel habituated to the technology and comforts and constantly newly released updates and developments of this technology, whereby we feel without a certain degree of material stimulus, we can't even remain content. Right? And we're here to say that we're not, advocating, primitivism or things like this, but to say, don't confuse that for what life is really about. Technology is a means, technology is a tool. The sophistications like we see in this studio, they're means by which we can culture what things are really about. Our relationship with something divine, the evolution of ourselves as a conscious being. And that the two don't stand in opposition to each other, but the presumption that things have evolved only from that gross matter, and that those material facilities are themselves the fulfillment of life, that we want to denounce. and say, don't seek fulfillment for yourself as an inherently conscious being in anything that's inherently made of matter. See that any form of matter is actually an animated expression of consciousness. Consciousness is pervading everything: trees, rocks, birds, clouds, people. Matter is simply a dull substance through which consciousness expresses itself to a greater or lesser vivid degree. So see that everything is actually a play of conscious energy, spiritual energy, and that what is the real sustenance for ourselves is in that movement, in that inherently dynamic nature of conscious interaction. And not only with each other, but with the original source, the ultimate source, the super subject, Krishna. So to seek that connection, to develop that relationship, and to recognize evolution as that, the evolution of our relationship with the supreme conscious subject, the supreme conscious source from which all things develop, that is the gist of our teachings. We can say the gist of all of Lord Krishna's teachings in the Bhagavad Gita, where he says, Aham sarvasya prabhavo mata sarvam pravartate iti matva bhajante mam buddha bhava samanvita. I am the origin of everything. Everything comes through me. Understanding this, the wise serve me with love. Hare Krishna. I'll conclude there and defer to the rest of our speakers. We have Brinda Didi with us. We're eager to hear from her also about this subject.
I feel very shy to follow Maharaj and our Janardhan Maharaj and our Tyagi Maharaj. They are my spiritual guardians. So I feel naturally I don't have much to say next to what they're saying. I will say that I remember very much my Gurudev, Srila Bhakti Suntra Govindadev Goswami Maharaj, saying a verse that I don't know the whole verse, but it says, Noi prahata tvam harimiha. And he said, all transcendental knowledge comes from above and reveals in your heart. And to me, hearing this was very important. One is because he said, of any verse, you should always remember this verse. And two, because when I went to my university, we had a class that was called The Methodology of Knowledge, into which we studied extensively and with no response how me being a subject and let's say that plant being an object, how would I perceive this, capture this, and have the knowledge of what this is. And so in between that, they said, so between the subject and the object, there's an image. And what is that image? And what is the conception of that image? And so we went on for days and days arguing, like, what is that image coming from me? Is that image coming from something I heard from somewhere else? What is this? And then while sitting at Gurudev's lotus feet, he would say, so all the transcendental knowledge actually comes from above, and it's given to you by a spiritual guide, by a spiritual person, somebody that already has that. How would I know what this plant is if I've never seen a plant? And we've heard so much that example of like the 4 blind men touching an elephant and seeing what is this elephant, and thinking because of my knowledge I think this is a tree trunk and this is something else. And people kept arguing and arguing and arguing about what the nature of the elephant is without knowing truly what is the essence of the elephant. And so I think in my little understanding and by my guru's affection, I think that subjective evolution of consciousness is to have the chastity and the affection to sit at the lotus feet of somebody that can give you the guidance to make your consciousness evolve, to go from where we are to above, from sitting and thinking so many different material things, thinking I am the master of everything I see, when in reality my senses are very limited. If I'm walking on the street, I can't even tell what's on the next corner. I can't tell if there's danger on that other side because I'm relying on my senses, and my senses are limited. So as I am a finite person, I can only hope and pray and be at the feet of somebody that through whom the infinite can reveal himself. So my consciousness and the consciousness of everybody would evolve through affection and through faith. I remember hearing something that I thought very beautiful of Param Guru Maharaj saying, how do we know if you see a light bulb? If that light bulb is off, then you understand there's nothing in there. But when that light bulb is on, you understand there's power running through it. So when you see two bodies, you see like a dead body and a person that's animated, you can understand what is the difference between those two. What's the difference between the inanimate and the animate? That the soul is not present there anymore. But when the soul is present there, it means there's consciousness. And what is a real duty? What shall we do with that consciousness? Should we associate with things that will only bring us down? Or should we associate with things that are very affectionate and are very beautiful and will only bring us up? That will connect us to that current that's going up. So the current is coming in a way, it's coming down because it's descending just like the Ganges is descending from above. And it's, even though it might mix with different things, it's untouched by everything. Some people say, oh, I see that in the Ganga, people throw like dead bodies or throw garbage or throw this, but the water of the Ganga is untouched by all that. And so that knowledge is coming from above and it's coming down towards us. And if we connect through that current of faith, then we will also go up and our consciousness will evolve. And I heard so many times Gurudev say, there's so many things that we don't have at the moment, we don't have in our hearts. But we can use our intelligence to do that. We can use our intelligence to see, I am not the master. I mean, really in my day-to-day life, I can clearly see how I am not the master of my reality. I might delude myself to think that, but in reality, so many things are going on. And I see it day in and day out in my work. People are thinking, all these things are under my control, and one thing goes differently in your life, and you lose control, and you lose all these material things you were surrounded by. And what do you have? What's in your heart? What have you been what have you been cultivating day in and day out? So cultivating your consciousness, cultivating really looking and searching for something that's higher than you, and something that really, if you give one finite step, it will give an infinite step towards you. So that is the nature of the infinite. So Gurudev would say, so how, Param Guru Maharaj, Gurudev was quoting Param Guru Maharaj said, well, how can the finite know the infinite? And Guru Maharaj said, well, if the infinite couldn't show himself to the finite, how would he be infinite? So the infinite is trying to show himself to us, and we should try to connect ourselves towards that. We should try to cultivate our consciousness towards the lotus feet of people that can actually give us the knowledge to go farther, to go ahead, to find what's really affection and love. And it's not something that is subjected to material things. So people sometimes, like Maharaj was saying, people sometimes think, oh, what I have is what I am. So if I have all these material things, then I am the master of this and I have all this. But beyond that, not only should we not be satisfied by that, there's not a lot of satisfaction within that, but the affection of somebody who has a beautiful, pure heart, the affection of somebody that can look at you and say, you are good, and all of this is within you. All of this capacity is within you because you are also, you're coming from that divinity. So within you, you have the capacity to move forward and see what's beautiful, what's affection, what's nectar, what's love. And you should be surrounded by friends, and you should be surrounded by people that want to push you forward, that want to do this. So in my day-to-day experience, I think, might not be very philosophical, but in my day-to-day experience, I think that meditating on that, meditating in my heart, trying to understand that only through the affection of my Gurudev and through the affection of other spiritual guides can I move forward, can I have some type of evolution, some type of understanding to see. Even there's two kinds of rocks, Gurudev would say. There's like dead rock and like alive rock. And even within that, I can't see that. My knowledge is so finite, my understanding is so finite. There's so many things I don't know and I can't see. And so if I want to learn something, like let's say I wanted to learn how to swim long distance, and I went myself into a pool and I realized, I don't even know what I'm doing. How am I going to swim if I don't know how to do like a stroke? I don't know how to breathe. I don't know how to do none of these things. So to evolve in what I'm trying to do, I need to find somebody that knows and somebody that will tell me, well, this is how you do it. This is how you move forward, and this is what you will find. And keeping the company of a person that can help me that way, I can make progress in learning how to swim long distance. And in the same way, in my spiritual life, for my consciousness to be able to see, to be able to move forward, to be able sometimes to just stay, I need to connect to that current. And that current is faith. So through faith also we see that all this knowledge will reveal in our hearts. And it's so much sweeter and so much better than just the thought of having material things, just the thought of having like inanimate things, things that will not bring me so much satisfaction. That's all I got to say.
I'm going to give a little conclusion to the subject, take-home message, maybe.
Too much.
One thing that Brenda mentioned, Brenda Davy, she said that in a conversation that Srila Maharaj had with one person, that person was saying that if the finite could know the infinite, then he would not be infinite. But Srila Maharaj, his reply was, if the infinite could not reveal himself to the finite, then he wouldn't be infinite. So it's also a question of the direction of the flow. If we're trying to consider, as Sripad Chagi Maharaj was saying, if we're trying to consider that everything is based on our own perception, on our own individual, accumulation of knowledge, that will be our evolution, then we're implying that we can go up that ladder of evolution based on our own endeavor, on our own physical force, and just by our own strength. But rather, if we will see that the converse side, that is the truth, that the infinite, being infinite, can reveal himself to the finite. And that really will be what we are talking about when we say that subjective evolution, that as we're seeing that rather we will be objects for the supreme subjective, and that flow will go in that direction by his sweet will come down to us. And if we can incorporate that into our own existence, that will be very positive. I remember Srila Govinda Maharaj saying, one place he was visiting one city in Colombia, and he told the persons, he said, you have everything you could want in terms of that you have beautiful climate, beautiful atmosphere, and some bounty from nature, vegetables and fruit, and so many nice things that are being provided. But he said, if you will just add this ingredient to your existence, then you will be able to fine-tune that very nicely. And that is Trinada pi sunichena taruat iva sahisnuna amanina manadena kirtaniya sadahari. He said this is Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's prescription. He said to proceed with humility, respect for others, and some tolerance. If you can function on that plane, then you can open yourself up to be able to receive, we can say, divine transmissions, which will come from that super subjective plane. And that will be very valuable, that will be very enriching. Instead of making just everything will be on the basis of our own limited energy and force, why not open ourselves up to receive some revelation from a superior plane? So that is what we're talking about tonight, and we're grateful for this opportunity to be here and to be able to participate in this program. I would also like to give thanks to our god sister Divya Shakti Devi Dasi, she's made some endeavor to organize these programs, and we're appreciative of the opportunity to speak on what we consider subjects which were given to us, by the generosity of our divine guardians, Srila Sridhar Maharaj, Srila Govinda Maharaj, Srila Bhaktivedanta Swami Maharaj. And we're happy to be able to, just speak on what they gave us, and which, as Rinda was saying, that we're hearing from somebody who's trying to enrich us, with a perception of another plane of existence, and that will be very beneficial. Jai. Hare Krishna.
Kirtan.
We'll sing Hare
So we can all
I would just chant Harinam Murti.
Krishna.
We have a question here, Maharaj.
Yes?
Everybody's coming up.
a nice kirtan.
Cheers.
No, we can move the chairs and move it.
Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Vaisya Parikara Shishi Guru Guranga Gandharvika Giridhari Jogi
Jai.
Jayam Vishnupad Hanamansa Paravajaka Charyashka Sarasada Shishiman Srila Bhakti Sundar Govinda Dev Goswami Maharaj Ki Jai. Jayam Vishnupad Hanamansa Paravajaka Charyashka Sarasada Shishiman Srila Bhakti Rakha Sridhar Dev Goswami Maharaj Ki Jai. Jai Bhagavan Srila Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Goswami Thakur Ki Jai. Jayam Vishnupad Srila Gaur Kishore Das Babaji Maharaj Ki Jai. Jayam Vishnupad Srila Satchidananda Bhakti Vinod Thakur Ki Jai. Jayam Vishnupad Vaishnava Sarvabhauma Srila Jagannath Das Babaji Maharaj Ki Jai. Rupanuga Guru Varga Ki Jai. Namachari Srila Haridas Thakur Ki Jai. Shri Rupa Sanatana Bhatta Raghunath Shri Jiva Gopal Bhatta Dasha Raghunath Shad Goswami Prabhu Ki Jai. Premsi Goho Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shri Vasudeva Shri Gaura Bhakta Vrinda Ki Jai. Shri Shri Radha Krishna Go Gopi Govardhan Sham Kuna Radha Kunda Govinda Yamuna Jo Ki Jai. Shri Chaitanya Saraswat Mat Ki Jai. Sokel Shri Chaitanya Saraswat Seva Shram Ki
Jai.
Samaveda Bhakta Vrinda Ki Jai.
Jai.
Shri Harinam Sankirtan Ki
Jai.
All the assembled devotees Ki
Jai.
All the devotees and friends Ki
Jai.
Gaur Premananda.
Jai Srila Bhakti Pavan Janardhan Maharaj Ki
Jai.
Jai Shri Bhakti Kamal Tyagi Maharaj Ki
Jai.
Rinda Devi Dasi Ki Jai. And Divya Shakti Devi Dasi.
Jai.
So now we will go upstairs. You can take an intermission and go to the bathroom, have a cup of tea, take a 10 or 15-minute intermission, and now we will go upstairs and we will have the love of vegetarian cooking with Abha Sharma. So that will happen in about 10 minutes. So you can follow us all upstairs. And then we'll have a beautiful vegetarian dinner. So please hold on with us. We go upstairs and
No testing. You're fine? All right. Good evening, everybody, and welcome to our second episode of Conscious Cooking. As you know, these are my two assistants, Nab and Lavanika, and we welcome you all at the Wave Studios. Once again, we would like to thank Wave Studios for giving us this opportunity. I would like to thank Shripad Tyagi Maharaj and Srila Janardhan Maharaj for coming here and blessing us and giving us this wonderful, wonderful platform. So today's prep is called stuffed whole wheat paratha. Now paratha, if you want, you can call it like a flatbread. It's whole wheat, and we would have different type of fillings. We can take different type of filling according to one's taste. We can have any of those. Lavanika would explain.
We can have carrots, we can have daikon, or bell peppers, or potatoes, or beets, and to satisfy one's taste, if you like spice, you can add chilies as well.
We can always do leftover vegetables or lentils and stuff and make them awesome. So to start our prep today, we take whole wheat flour and just a little warm water, knead the dough. You don't need to add any salt. And this dough, let it sit for about 20 minutes. Maybe 10, that should be good, depends on how much you're making. If you have more dough, you can let it sit for more time, let it work. And the dough could be, if you have dietary restrictions, you can have different kind of doughs, like you can use different flour. There you go. So we're going to cover it up and let it sit. And you can put a paper towel on it and cover it up and let it sit. There you go. Once we are done with prepping up the dough, we're going to start with the boiled potatoes. This is the first stuffing. We have a potato that's boiled here, and we're going to peel and smush it up. Let me move all this out of your way. There you go. We're going to peel that. While Nab is peeling and smushing, I already have the stuffing ready. If Lavanika can show us. And there we have, right here. So we have this boiled potatoes, mush it up nicely, add some spices. So let's do our spices for today. There we go.
Right, our spices, we have, we have salt right here, and we have paprika, and we have cumin powder, chaat masala, and jeera powder.
We can also cut a little bit of ginger, Julian. There you go. And if somebody likes real chilies, they can put some small ones. They're very hot, but you can do without it. There we go. So while I have these guys prep this up, I have the stuffing ready. We're going to take, I already have the dough prepped up. This is how it's going to look. It shouldn't be very hard or very soft. It should be in the middle. So it's easily pliable. You could roll it out nicely. If it's too stuffed, it's going to taste very hard when it's done. So we roll out 2 small balls. Go. And put them in the dry flour. This is your rolling pin. But before you start, make sure you have your gas on. There you go. So this is a heavy bottom pan, tawa. Let it warm up a little bit. You can put it on high for the beginning, do a medium low, depending on how it's going. So we have our potato. We can mush half of the potato. You can do it right here. There you go. And we'll cover our dough so it doesn't. Roll it out into small circles. Go. Both of them. Try not to add a lot of flour, because then when you cook it, it comes out very crispy and all the flour just comes in the mouth. So as little as possible. A scoop, thank you very much. And see, it's mushed nicely. Then you can add all those spices and this is your filling. Thank you very much. Press it out gently all the way around. Use the other one to cover it gently. We start rolling towards the side first, on the rim, on the outside, so the filling doesn't come out. Yeah. So as we talked about last time, cooking, everybody knows how to cook. But what we're trying to do here is cook consciously. We are aware of where all our raw ingredients are coming from, who are we doing it for, and the intent with which we are cooking. So make sure to offer all that once you're done. So here we have, it's warm enough. We lay it out. Now as we talked about, we have other stuffing. Here you go, you can add the ginger in this if you want. Thank you. So now we have other stuffing too. This is the cauliflower. So Nab is going to grate cauliflower. And what's the third filling?
Daikon.
Daikon. So we peel it and we grate it. You can always boil them if you don't like that taste, if it's too high for you. But if not, these vegetables are very good raw. But the things that you might want to use is like, beets. You want to maybe, or we can do spinach also, cottage cheese. That would be also wonderful, wonderful filling. So see how it's cooked on one side. Flip it off. And this is how a prep is going to look, just to let you know. And we can garnish it with tomato. We can serve it out with tomatoes. We have a cilantro mint chutney here and some wonderful yogurt, homemade yogurt. So we can lower the heat. I think it's cooking a little bit. Here you go. So important thing here I wanted to just mention was like the cooking, the oil medium that you have. You can use any oil that you want. You can use olive oil, or any oil that you fancy. But I like using clarified butter. That's my favorite. You can lower the heat. No worries. It's still good. And so all you have to do is layer it out once on the back, once on the front. There you go. As I was saying, if you have dietary restrictions or you fancy a certain type of oil, could be almond oil, coconut oil, safflower oil, anything, olive oil that you want, you just go ahead. Any kind of flour that you want to use, it can be made in all different types. So if you can give me a plate, maybe you just lay it out right here. I think this one would be a good one. We have one right here. Thank you. There you go. Here, Lavanika will hold it out for you. We can take it off, lower the heat a little bit while we prep up the second one. So, right there. So how about our second filling? What's our second filling, Lavanika?
Our second filling is daikon.
Okay, let's go for daikon. For daikon, just a little more addition to the spice. You might want to put a little ajwain. What it does is daikon is a little heavy on taste. You just want to kind of dilute that flavor if you don't like it that strong. And it also helps very nicely, ease it up. So just add a little ajwain, like a pinch. Those are like small seeds, like cumin, but a little different. And you can easily find them in grocery stores. So that would be the only addition. And you can cut on spices, like if you don't like black pepper too much, or chaat masala, you can just do plain salt, paprika, cumin powder. That'll be good. So we lay it out. See, it should not get too hot, so it burns the prep. There you go. This is a daikon. And we have Nab very nicely. Here you go, Nab, cutting board. So we lay out everything in here. He is grating the daikon live for us right here. And when the grating is done, you take out the water, because otherwise your paratha is just going to be a one big blob, and we don't want all the water. So we just squeeze out all the water. As we know, daikon has a good amount of that. So the same thing, we lay it out flat, press it on the sides gently, dust it with flour, roll it out. And if you want some chili, don't forget to add the green one. Cut it out and add it. So there you go. On the sides first and then in the center. So this way it will not come out. So for the third prep, let's do two.
So
Nice to roll.
the third one is going to be cauliflower.
Thank you very much. If you could cover the dough. Thank you, Nab. This is our fresh cut, grated daikon. See how it's like all water, like so much water? So you don't want all that in your paratha. So make sure you take it out once you're done grating it. And flip it. You can turn it high and again. Oh, thank you very much, Nab. So which one is your favorite?
Honestly, I like potato. I like the potato.
Potato. What is it about potatoes everybody likes? Right?
It's kind of, I like it kind of mushy, and sometimes this is it's a little crunchy sometimes. So I like it. With the potato filling.
And what's your favorite side ingredient that you want to have it with? Like, do you like it with chutney,
I like
the
it with
cilantro,
chutney.
or
I like cilantro.
or yogurt?
I like chutney.
You like chutney. How about pickles?
Interesting.
Interesting. Yes. My husband always says, you know, you have pickles with something that's not tasty. So I guess parathas won't be it. Unless the parathas are not tasty. But if we offer them, I am pretty sure it's going to be worth it. So here we go again. Whatever oil that you fancy, go right in. I'm a little generous on oil. I mean, my clarified butter, because I love the smell. But you can try and tone it down. There you go. If you feel the flame is too high and it's smoking, you can turn it down. Cook it nicely. Just needs a little prep work basically. Other than that, it's a very simple, wholesome prep. You just make sure, and we always have, you know, potatoes, boiled potatoes in a fridge, or some vegetable, just cut and grate it, and it's good. We're good to go. And here we are with our third filling. Which one was it? Any guesses?
Cauliflower.
Okay.
Cauliflower.
He gave it away.
Cauliflower.
So this is our cauliflower. Meanwhile, Lavanika is going to prep up our, it's right here. And now we'll get us some tall glass of lemonade. Oh, here you go. Sorry, you have it in here. This is mine. Collective. Thank you. So you see our dough that initially we started. It's almost ready. If you feel it's a little mushy, you can always add flour, but don't make it too hard because then you can't roll it out. There you go. I know you can't smell it through the camera, but I bet it's going to be awesome. So I'd probably like to ask, I don't see Tyagi Maharaj, Janarda Maharaj, which one is your favorite filling? Which one is your favorite filling?
Filling?
Dal, yes, one of my favorites too. We can do urad, dry urad dal. That's actually cooked one is really, really good. So here we go. This is our last one right here. And let's cut it out and have our guests taste it. Let's turn it off. Let's see what they're up to. Okay. How about we cut it out for everybody to try it? Would you like that? Okay. So let's get a big knife. How about a big knife? Let's cut it out. It's a teeny bit hot, a little bit hot. Okay. I'm going to hold it. There you go. Slow and steady. Okay. Let's do this. Okay. And how about maybe just like this, halves. Okay. Let's try these. And here, you can cut these and spread them out. And how about bring another plate and we can pass it on to everybody out here to try it. Yeah, thank you. There's another one right behind you. Thank you so much, Lavanika. Looks very wonderful. Wow, it is hot. How did you manage to cut it? Whoa. You did? Here you go. Let's spread it out. No, spread it out so we can see. And how about some chutney on the side with this one? There you go. Thank you, Lavanika. It's too big. Yes, on the side would be good, right? What do you think? Thank you, Lavanika. That looks amazing. And remember, it's conscious cooking. So you need to be 100% aware of what you're doing, who are you cooking it for, and then special ingredient. Thank you. Here, let's take it out and let's everybody try it. Here, Lavanika. There you go. She's cutting it. Okay, there you go. So take it out. Once again, I would like to thank Wave Studios. It's been such a wonderful experience coming here and doing this every time, and this is our episode 2, and hope we have many, many such more blessed conscious cooking days. Just say one for